Hello everyone, I think we've got most people in the room now. I'm Molly Rosenberg, I'm the Director of the Royal Society of Literature, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the last event of our first Northern Ireland Writers' Day, a new partnership between the brilliant Arts Council of Northern Ireland and the RSL. Thank you so much to our speakers and to everyone who's joined us to make today such a memorable day. It's been wonderful to see so many of you through the course, for the writing workshop with Daljit Nagra, and for my conversation with Paul McVeigh about the RSL Open Fellowship Programme. Through RSL Open, a programme we've launched as part of our 200th birthday, over the next 2 years, we'll be electing 60 fellows of the RSL from communities underrepresented in UK literary culture. We're asking for your recommendations of writers, particularly the writers of Northern Ireland, which you can submit through our website, and we'll add some more information on how to do that at the end of the discussion this evening. I have a few housekeeping notes for this evening. If you want to talk to each other during the event, you can use the chat function, which is at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions for the writers, you can put those in the Q&A box that's also at the bottom of the screen. Our wonderful chair, Paul McVeigh, will try to get through as many of your questions as possible later on. So please put them into the Q&A as soon as they come to you so we can collect them. Members of the RSL team will also be adding links to different writers and programmes that come up in the discussion, so keep the chat open if you want to see those rolling through during the event. I am now very pleased to pass to Damien Smith, Head of Literature for the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, who it has been so wonderful to work with alongside Paul on the programme today. Thank you so much, Damien.
Okay, thank you, Molly, and everyone. You're very welcome to this evening's event. It's been a great day, and the good news is this is the beginning of a partnership with the Royal Society of Literature, and we'll be hosting another roundtable event at the start of the summer to explore a little more deeply some of the key issues around the writing experience in Northern Ireland. We have a unique set of circumstances at work on the imagination here, and contexts from language to genre to identity, whether writers are from here or living here, are very much in play for writing of all kinds. So watch the social media, sign up for the e-newsletters for that second event. But look, time runs away with us on sessions like this, so let's get underway this evening with this brilliant assembly. In the chair is novelist and short story writer Paul McVeigh, whose debut novel, The Good Son, won the Polari Prize in 2016, published by Salt. He co-founded the London Short Story Festival. He's associate director at Word Factory. He's written comedy, essays, plays, flash fiction. Most recently, his stories have been published in Common People, edited by Kit Duval, and Being Various for Faber. He's edited the anthology Belfast Stories with Dora Press, and the soon-to-be released The 32, an anthology of Irish working class voices. And out right now is Queer Love from Southward Literary Journal, Munster Literature Centre in Cork. So look, over to you, Paul, and our special guests, and everyone enjoy the discussion.
Oh, that was lovely. Right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming and joining us tonight. We're here to round off this wonderful day that's been organised by the Royal Society of Literature and the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. And we're here really to talk about Northern Irish writers and to shine a light on them. And we often feel here that we're operating in the shadows a little bit, and perhaps that we are unseen or unheard or forgotten about. And this is one occasion where we can't say that, and we definitely feel that gaze, and it's coming from afar, and we like that a lot here. And so this is a time for us to shine. And what I love about this opportunity that we all have here is that we're not here to nominate ourselves. We're here to pick writers that we love from here, that we want everyone to know about, in case they haven't heard of them, but also, essentially for this program to encourage you to nominate your favorite writers for the fellowship with the RSL, and this kind of quite a unique opportunity where these nominations can happen from the outside of the organization. So please do feel inspired, and hopefully we'll inspire you tonight with some of the names that we bring up, and we look forward to hearing the names that you might bring up as well in the chats. So let me just start by introducing the panel. And I'm going to just take it in alphabetical order. And Wendy Erskine's short story collection, Sweet Home, was published by Stinging Fly and then brought over by Picador and published here in the US, and won the Butler Literary Award recently, which was also shortlisted for the Edgehill Prize and the Republic of Consciousness Prize, and longlisted for the Gordon Byrne Prize and the Sunday Times Short Story Award. Her stories and non-fiction have been on BBC Radio 3 and 4 and an RTE radio. She hosts a show on Soho Radio for Rough Trade Books and is a full-time secondary school teacher. I'll just say as well, because so often these bios are a little bit out of date. I also know in the last couple of days, Wendy has just sold her second collection, and I think one of the headlines for the bookseller was something like, one of our best living short story writers, which, I'm gonna give that the palm of my seal of approval there. And so congratulations, Wendy. And next up we have Daljit Nagar as a poet and the chair of the RSL. So we've also, as well as talking to us about writing and Northern Irish writing, you can talk to Daljit, of course, about poetry in his great class today, but also about the workings of the RSL and the fellowship. He'll be able to answer your questions about that. He won the Forward Prize for his best first collection in 2007, and he is inaugural poet in residence for Radio 4 and Radio 4 Extra, and he presents Poetry Extra and a weekly program on Radio 4 Extra, and he is Senior Lecturer of Creative Writing at Brunel University, London. Welcome. And we have Glenn Patterson. Everybody knows Glenn Patterson in Northern Ireland, and he is still living in Belfast and founding Painting of Fighting Words Belfast, an incredible organisation to encourage young people into writing. He's the director of the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's University Belfast. He was in the 2016 Hellman Visiting Chair of Irish Studies at the Villanova University, hope I've said that right. And before that, in 2013, Ireland Fund Artist in Residence at St Michael's College, University of Toronto. And we have Shannon Yee, an award-winning writer and creative producer. It'll be interesting later on because I want to hear about the fact that Shannon's written over many forms, and so I want to see what the community's like in those different forms as well. I say there's a good bit of rivalry going on there, Shannon. Her perspectives as an immigrant, biracial ethnic minority, queer artist mother with a disability, living in Northern Ireland are deeply embedded in her work. Shannon is working on her first short story collection. Her short story, The Brightening Side, was published in Belfast Stories. Very, very good. And addresses new motherhood, racism and tenacity in North Belfast. This December, she was published in Queer Love, an Irish anthology. Now, I haven't forgotten anybody, have I? No, that's okay, good. Well, welcome everyone, and I hope the questions are gonna, I can see 20 written down. I'm not going to open the chat box because I won't be able to concentrate reading what everyone says, so just alert me in case they're saying anything bad. Welcome, and really, I'm going to start with the toughest question, which I know you can be as generous and wide-reaching and kind of full career spanning perspective as you like about your favorite writers from Northern Ireland. I made a list earlier on, and you can see there's about 20 on mine, so I'm not going to say mine unless I really have to, because I want to give you the opportunity to share yours. And I thought, Wendy, I would love to hear who would you class as your favorite Northern Irish writers, and and what forms that you're particularly interested in.
Right, Paul, there's so many people. I mean, I was looking at the population of Greater Manchester, and it's bigger than Northern Ireland. And I think it's quite incredible, just the number of wonderful writers we have from such a, really quite small place. I'm going to begin with Lucy Caldwell, who I think is just such an amazing writer across such a, she's written for theatre, she's written for radio, she's written short stories, she's written novels, and a person of total generosity as well, I think, in her time for others, and just her whole approach. So I think Lucy's superb. I'm going to name quite a few people here as quickly as I can. Susanna Dickey, I find wonderful. I think she's a hilarious person, and that just completely translates into her fiction. So Tennis Lessons, I think, is such an entertaining and vibrant novel. Carrie Doherty, I came home from work early today, I switched on the radio, had a coffee, and who was on Radio 4 reading their non-fiction, Thin Places, but Carrie Doherty, an absolutely beautiful memoir from Derry. I'm so not in touch with the natural world, but she's looking at how the whole aspect of the natural world is healing and sort of, spiritually edifying and all the rest of it. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful book. Darren Anderson, another person from Derry, writing non-fiction, absolutely wonderful. Jan Carson, Bernie McGill, I think both really, really interesting writers, short story writers too, also writing novels. Colette Bryce, I'm picking everybody from Derry. Colette Bryce as well, I think, is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful writer. Jean Blakeney, again, a terrific poet. There's just so many people really out there. Malachy O'Doherty, I really enjoy Malachy's writing as well, across a range of different forms. Stephen Sexton, another wonderful writer, poet. So there's so much, and I'm only just touching on who is coming to mind just at present. And again, it's one of those things, if you ask me on another day, I would probably pick a whole other range of people. Michael Hughes, I'll finish with Michael Hughes. Michael Hughes, again, I think such an interesting, imaginative, really unusual novelist. So that's my list, Paul. I can put in a few more. Is that enough?
Well done.
Okay,
You can just take a wee break now, because that was pretty.
I'll chill.
Yes, I'm going to give that a yes. I mean, that was fantastic. Great names there, and a real range as well, from poetry to short stories and novels, and so thank you for that. And I'm going to go to Glenn. Just put you on the spot there.
One of the things that Wendy said when she was talking about Lucy Caldwell and saying about her generosity, Lucy's generosity to other writers, it is one of the things about here, I think, that is really quite remarkable, and it's the appetite that there is to do stuff and to do stuff for other people. And it's, I mean, I'm sure all of us here benefited from the encouragement of other writers when we were starting. I mean, certainly I did. I know very, very, very early on, I was looking for help, and the Arts Council of Northern Ireland at that stage, Michael Longley was there, Kieran Carson was there. They were supportive. This is back in the 1980s, and I think that's something that's carried right down to today. So when I think of the writers who I admire, I'm often thinking of people who are also extremely good at encouraging other writers. So thinking of, Wendy mentioned Stephen Sexton. Stephen Sexton is a lecturer in the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's, and he's been very encouraging. Susie Dickey, who Wendy also mentioned, another of the writers who's come through there. But they're all also doing things. So the Tangerine magazine, which is really, really an important journal for new writing in Northern Ireland, was started by students within the Seamus Heaney Centre, completely independent of us, but they started this journal. Manuela Moser and Stephen Connolly, who have the Lifeboat series of events and is now a publishing press. They're publishing people like Scott McKendry, fantastic poet. and I think a pamphlet of his was a Poetry Society choice. So I think that's one of the really good things about here. Wendy herself, Wendy didn't mention that she did teach Lucy Caldwell when Lucy was at school. But there has been that kind of hand-on always. I think here is one of the things about it. So people that Wendy didn't mention that are left to mention. So many of those writers that she did mention would be people on the list that I would have as well. But I think of Leontia Flynn, terrific poet, Sinead Morrissey, David Park, Owen McCafferty, playwright, screenwriter. And I think, again, one of the things about literature here at the moment is that we have a really good squad, in all areas of writing, screen, stage, short stories, poetry, novels, nonfiction. We're really, really strong. Yeah, I think once you start, as you've just heard, you can't stop.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I was just reading just because it was came up in my mind. I was just reading about Stacey Craig's film today, which is just really taken off. And I've read two actually incredible reviews. One in Variety, and the other by was it Roger Egbert? Is that was his name? That really famous reviewer from Hollywood. Both really praising her work. And just incredible. It's just fantastic stuff. Shannon, would you like to give us some of your Northern Irish?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna kind of pose them, also adding to the list of ones to watch, because I think what's interesting is kind of you've got younger generations of people coming up through, and the way that which don't just serve to make me feel older and older and older. The way that I think, especially now, people are looking at form and playing with form, and kind of we're all in the business of writing narrative, aren't we? A story, and whatever format we take and choose to put that content in, then kind of ends up in different genres and so forth. So it's very interesting to me to consider how formats and genres get messed around and present some sort of work that's interdisciplinary, but also how we all as writers kind of go, let me try this, and let me try this bit, and let me try this bit, not just because it's interesting creatively, but because sometimes we kind of have to. Like, for example, it's a really hard time to be a theater maker right now. Let's do some short stories, or let's do some children's fiction. So in addition to the highly esteemed company that I am in little tiny boxes with this evening, because not being from here, I'm fascinated by voice. And all of you guys write voice in ways that I never could. And it's amazing to listen to, it's amazing to read, and I really, really appreciate it. And those kinds of works, I'm like, I can't write that, and these guys can write it better. So to add to that, I would also, yes, I think you mentioned Stacey Gregg, who is a queer scriptwriter. Another one to watch is Fionnuala Kennedy. I'm looking more kind of from like the theater view. She has done a lot of work with Prime Cut and around working class issues around young people in care and homelessness. Another one to watch, Derry, is Abby Oliveira, who identifies as Afro-Celt spoken word performance poet, and she's a new mommy, and dear God, that's hard. So she is doing some really exciting work and making the live word live in some really exciting ways. Also, I haven't read this person yet, but I feel he's worth mentioning. Darren McNulty, who's 16 and won the Wainwright Prize. Was it this year or just last year, about nature writing? That's so not my bag, but I have to pick up his work and read it. And other ones, another queer writer who has done fiction but also plays is Hilary McCollum. And I have to say, along the lines of poets that grow community, because I am very much community activist, and I just believe in so much of that. You've got Paul Mattern, who writes poetry and writes historical poetry in a way that I pick up the page and I go, what? Well, I gotta do this history book and get some cliff notes on it. But he also runs the River Mill Retreat down in Downpatrick, which is this like haven. As a writer, as a parent of a young child, I can just go away. He cooks amazing food for me, and I can go and like delve deeply into my craft. And also on that line, it has to be, Maria McManus and all of her work with Poetry Jukebox to bring poetry back out of the page to the people, where you have this delightful looking, blue megaphone nearly, and you get to experience different poets reading their work. So I think all of it's really exciting to consider different voices that are here, different voices that are playing with different formats, because fundamentally we're all telling story. It's just the way in which we choose to tell the story and stories to articulate what we want to say and to each other. So it's a really exciting time to be in Northern Ireland. I can say that as a blow-in, can't I?
Yeah,
right?
but you've been a long time bloom.
I know.
I mean,
I've been blowing it here for a long time.
Daljit, do you know, we're obviously fascinated by what people think of us, on the outside looking in, and we kind of imagine what it is, because we generally hear quite extreme opinions because they're the newsworthy ones. But I just wondered, first of all, I am really keen to hear, kind of the writers from Northern Ireland that may have come to your attention that you love, and that we might share that in with you. But also, what's the opinion that you think is the general opinion from abroad looking in, about Northern Irish writing, currently, and because we just like to hear about ourselves, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'm just going to flatter you all now, aren't I, Paul, by saying you are world-class writers. And I mean, on a personal level, when I first started writing, really the Irish, Northern Ireland, the Heaney's, May McGuckian, Derek Mann, people like that are really important to me. And the authors subsequent to that, because what I connected with was this being inside the language and outside it, this playfulness, being inside the centre, the metropolitan, as it were, the London, the White House, or Whitehall, sorry, but also outside. So I've always really enjoyed the kind of playfulness of Irish writing, which I'm not sure you get the same level of play, the same level of mischief that you in England. Being sort of passive in the centre, slightly different. So I've always turned to Irish writers for inspiration, because I feel their politics, their attitude to language, the politics of their language is really energising and radical and different, in a way that I might turn to American authors. So I think it's very exciting in that comparison. Some of the authors we've heard mentioned are thankfully already fellows of the Royal Society of Literature, but not many of them. So if people are going to fill a form in, please do check on the Royal Society of Literature website for some of the names. I'm pretty sure Lucy Caldwell is a fellow. I hope she is.
She is.
Let's give you a mad part. I know you mentioned her, how she's a fantastic author anyway. So that's great. And I guess a couple of young ones I'd really champion would be Caroline Hughes. Caroline Hughes' book Gathering Light. I judged the Shine Strong Award in 2015. And I gave that the first prize. And she uses scientific information as a way of energising the lyric poem. And I'm pretty ignorant on sciences, but she has a way of making science compelling in the way that Stephen Sexton uses kind of computer gaming language, and makes that kind of relevant to our lives, and uses that as metaphors for understanding our existence right now. So I could probably mention so many young authors coming through, or new authors.
Can I come in and just say, Keelan Hughes is a brilliant poet. She's also a really good novelist. And I'm going to have to stop saying this, but she did do a master's course at the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's. So and Stephen Sexton is there as well. But yeah, she's a brilliant novelist as well. And I think again, Shannon mentioned it. Writers writing in different forms. The people, again, Susie Dickey, a very fine poet, also published by the Lifeboat Press, as well as a novelist. So that, I mean, that's one of the really interesting things, is that there is this this crossover between forms and genres.
I think, also just to remind people, we are encouraging you tonight to go and nominate writers, and there's a couple of submission details, and you do have to look in, and of course with all these young writers, they may not have the 2 books that are the 2 pieces of work that are required, but that this is something that maybe just be a matter of time. Look at our Wendy, whose new book is out imminently, and also just to sort of to keep bearing that in mind, because from what I gather, that the this openness from the Royal Society, it's not just a one-off moment, but this is going to open again next year, I think, isn't that right? Or later?
Yeah. So 2 years, 30 this year, and 30 new fellows this year, 30 new fellows next year, yeah.
So those writers with one book, get your act together and get your next book sorted. If you had a wee motivation, there's one there, just to add that one wee more one to your list there. So so keep that in mind. So don't be hugely disappointed if your favorite writer just has one book to, because you can keep an eye on again for next year. But yeah, so just have we look at that criteria, because and use your vote well for those writers. And now we're actually sort of halfway through already, and what I really want to make sure tonight is that we have the space for people here to engage with you rather than just to listen to the questions that I pose to you. So I just want to we look to see if there are questions we have. I have to Wendy. Wendy, can you see this, or do I have to? Can you see her?
I can put it on here.
I read it to you anyway.
You read it to me. You read it to me.
Anyway, just to Wendy, I love your sweet home. Oh, many of your stories seem to be about a life half lived, where these little moments must lead to regret or a stuck place, keeping the person able to move. I would love to speak to you about this. Oh, I really like her. Her name's Heather, and she says thank you at the end as well. Just saying.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely.
Would you agree with her and the way she reads your stories? These moments that are these lives half lived and moments.
Yeah, I think they are. I think their lives half lived. Their lives where people are kind of stuck because of maybe something that's happened in the past or whatever. These aren't hyper articulate people. These aren't super stylish people in beautiful clothes, incredibly articulate, self-consciously clever people. But they're individuals who have had probably more potential than ever came to fruition. So yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. Keep the questions coming, and obviously we're keen to keep it about writers from here and the workings of the actual RSL Open program. I mean, if someone just come in here talking about getting negative feedback about their book being about the Troubles, and has anyone ever experienced this where they have been refused because their work has been refused because of the subject matter? And I have to say, my book is set during the Troubles, and I was told for a very long time that I would never get it published, and and everyone's sick, and particularly from people here. We're sick listening to the Troubles and things like that. So yes, I think that is a common story. But I think now, it's interesting. You have a sort of, I think that lives right beside a lot of people who I know who just are sick of being asked to write about the Troubles or feel that they have to represent the Troubles. I know, Jan,
Paul, nobody can tell us what to write and what not to write. I mean, nobody knows how the imaginations work. I mean, my younger daughter, who's now 15, when she was 11, told me she was going to write a Troubles novel. She was absolutely fascinated by, as we all are, we're fascinated by that period just before we were born, that time that our parents lived through. How did we come to be? What was the world that produced us? And at the time there was a lot of debate about, should we be doing this? Shouldn't we be doing this? She wanted to do it. Why wouldn't she do it? And of course, Anna Burns, you read Milkman. I mean, Milkman was a complete reset. It is such a brilliant novel. Now, if you'd the experience that you had, I'm sure others here, I don't know, Wendy, if you've ever had this, or Shannon, you've had it, but I certainly experienced the people saying it's been done, or we're tired of it. Well, tough. This is where we live. these are the stories that come out of this place, so why wouldn't we write them? And we'll write them when we want to write them. We'll write them with humor when we want to write them with humor. We'll get sick of it ourselves when we feel sick of it, and we can write about being sick of it, but nobody can tell you what to do or when to do it. So keep writing your book, whoever that was who asked the question. Brilliant writing is brilliant writing. It will find its audience, and of course what happens is that the thing that nobody wanted, suddenly they want everything to be the same as that, and they'll do that. It's like watching kids, 5-year-olds play football. The ball gets kicked and publishers all run in one direction, and then it gets kicked over the other side, and then they'll chase it in the other way. So while it's in your direction, chase after it.
And maybe historical periods are like, I don't know, like a verse form, like a sonnet, you have to, that's a constraint, you have to find ways to innovate that. And why shouldn't you write about a particular historical period and find new ways to talk about it? That should be an energizing process, actually, to look at what's been done before and how I can interpret that anew. I think it should be really exciting. And publishers should look to promote the newness of the historical period, the way someone's written it afresh.
I had a couple of people who said to me, do you think with your next book you'll be able to move beyond East Belfast? And I thought that was such an incredibly telling comment about people's attitude to others, as though like some stories were, some people's lives and some people's stories and narratives were kind of a bit second rate compared to others, and that your life was intrinsically more interesting if you lived in London or if you lived in Brooklyn or if you lived wherever, that would necessarily make your life more interesting. So, my response is no. I'll be writing about the same sort of people again, because to me, what they have to, what they represent is something really, really diverse and, in a sense, I suppose, universal. But I suppose as well, like the Northern Ireland or the North of Ireland experience, it's not a homogenous one. And I remember being on a panel with Shannon in Waterford. And again, I hate saying this because it sounds as though we're a gang and we hang out at each other's houses all the time and that kind of thing, which isn't really the way of it. But Shannon, I don't know if you can remember that what you were saying is such a different experience of Belfast from mine, and there's so many different voices, there's so many different experiences, so to lump them all together as the Belfast experience is just very reductive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
completely.
Shannon, can I bring you in here, because there's a question here which I think might be interesting for you. What advice would you give to a Northern Irish writer hoping to have their first short story published, given that you've had your experience in the last 12 months or so, hasn't it? How did you find that? What advice would you give to that person
in order to get their first short story published?
What advice would you give to a Northern Irish writer hoping to have their first short story published? So I guess I may talk a little bit about your experience of having yours. Was it hard, easy? What were there routes that you thought, that would definitely be easier, or more productive?
Yeah, and well, I think I only kind of switched genres to the short. I've always been interested in the short form. It might be because I have really bad attention span, and so like I always loved 10-minute plays, and I wrote loads of really bad poetry in high school. So there's something about distilling down and into an essence, and then ended up doing more theater. So I've been and still am on a very humbling, steep learning trajectory about the short story world and the publishing world, which is very different than getting a script written and then produced. So I would certainly recommend getting in touch with writers that you admire. There's some lovely ones here and loads that have been mentioned in terms of reading their writing and reading about what they say about writing. Definitely the literary journals that are out there, which are increasing. A bunch of them have been mentioned tonight. And it is just, if you need a deadline, it is one big submissions calendar. You take some time and you look at all of the writing competitions and the deadlines. Deadlines come and go, but if it's something that'll get your butt to the page to write. And then the more you kind of are showing up at the page and getting words down, and something might emerge where you go, oh, I've got these possible selections in my back pocket. They might be at different phases of being revised and so forth, but you've got to have them ready. in some way. But yeah, meet people, buy them coffee, buy them lunch. I owe Paul a big pub lunch, but you know, when lockdown releases itself, we'll go on the piss. And yeah, it's just a chance to, you could ask for feedback, you could ask for advice, and it's just a lot of research and write, and get to know the writers also that you respect, and that you feel have integrity to not just their writing, but who they are as a writer in the community. And I might be speaking that way because, you know, as a queer woman of color with a disability, community is really important, and like bringing people along and lifting everybody up is really important. I mean, fortunately, not a lot of the Northern Irish writing community here is about that, perhaps because there is a shared experience of what it, you know, of Northern Ireland and being misunderstood or misrepresented. That's a long answer for you.
That's great. Dalzia, we were talking today, Molly, about the community of writers, and I think Northern Ireland has an incredible community of writers. I think partly due to isolation, you know, I think that kind of encourages community. And I think I wonder with your experiences, I guess, as the further you go up in the food chain, I guess, is I'm thinking that you're now chair of the RSL, and you know, there's a really famous poet on the radio, and you know, does your idea of this community change? Does your need for it change?
Oh, for the Royal Society of Literature, sorry.
For like a community of writers, that you need that community. I think here we feel it still really strongly.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm hearing today, partly about the Royal Society of Literature and community we have there, is to broaden that community. And once we've picked certain authors, it's not necessarily the authors themselves, it's the stories they're going to bring to the centre, as it were, to London, and we can hopefully promote those stories as well as the names. And I mean, Wendy mentioned, I think it's East Belfast, or somebody mentioned Troubles earlier. Once they become norms and accepted in the kind of, you know, the big metropolitan, and we can promote those sort of authors, those stories, they become the norm. And that helps to deepen and enrich community. Otherwise, certain things are just seen as unfashionable. As Glenn was saying, but publishers run one way with the football, then the other way. And hopefully we can sort of stabilise and normalise things. So I mean, this whole project really is to promote stories and promote regions as well as authors. So hopefully that broadens and deepens community.
Yeah, and so you want to say something, Glenn? Sorry.
I don't. My first novel came out in 1988, so that's 33 years ago. That's 33 years ago. Some of these conversations I remember having at the time, and it's, you know, this idea of normalizing or periphery, it's I don't know what it is. I just find it. I can't believe that we still have to have this conversation. You know, I think of the great novels and the great writers. We've mentioned quite a lot of them. I think of the novels that had been published around the time that I was starting to write. Think of Cal, which had just been published, maybe was that about 1985 or something, early 80s that was published, mid 80s. You know, it's not that there aren't writers from here who haven't had success or profile. It's just that it seems as though we just have to keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. And there are lots of, everywhere you look, there are writers from here. There are writers from Ireland, North and South, who are publishing with brilliant publishers in Ireland, North and South. There are people who are not living here anymore. There are people who are living in the States. There are people who are living all over the world, and they're from here. Our literature is, to use that, being various from Louis MacNeice's Snow and from Lucy Caldwell's collection with Faber. It is varied and it's everywhere. And I feel this somehow, the idea that we're all in here and we can't get noticed is ever so slightly humiliating.
Well, I think what we started talking about there was the idea of a community of writing. I know we've sort of digressed a little bit, but I'd just like to get back to that point a little bit, because this evening is about that. So, you know, it is about a community. It's about ourselves as a form of community of writers. I mean, we're very strong in community here, of community of writers, and we want to encourage writers to feel that there are people here, that there are places here where people can go to learn, to receive encouragement. And also, I mean, Wendy, when I know you came to writing, I mean, I was writing younger and then had a massive break, and I know you've come to writing later as well. I mean, when coming to it at that later in life, did you feel that there was a community already existing there that you could be part of, and that could help you?
Right, well, for anybody that doesn't know, I mean, I basically, my situation was that I ended up getting one afternoon off work a week for a year, and I wanted to do something during that afternoon that was going to be useful rather than just loafing about reading a magazine or going for coffee or whatever. So I ended up doing a course in Dublin, going to Dublin every Monday afternoon, and then I'd add the short story collection as a result of that. So it's just explained really quickly. I didn't know any writers whatsoever. And why should I? You know, I worked in a job that, even though it was I work as an English teacher, and it was in some ways you could say a job that involved books non-stop, I didn't know any writers at all. And I can remember coming back on the bus from Dublin with a load of, you know, the sort of proof copies of my book that I'd been told to sort of give to people. And, you know, Declan that publishes me had said, now don't be giving them to taxi drivers, or don't be just giving these things out willy-nilly. You know, try and give these to people. I thought, well, who do I give it to? I don't know one person. And so, you know, I didn't feel like a member of a community whatsoever, really. And looking back on it in retrospect, I suppose there were people that probably, even though I didn't personally know them, might have been quite happy to have received one of these things. But I thought it was incredibly presumptuous of me just to send these off to people that I didn't know. So I didn't feel personally that there was a community there whatsoever. And I would have to say, Paul, that, you know, you were a person who was absolutely wonderful to me. I mean, we didn't know each other. You kindly met me, and we talked over the whole thing, and it was really helpful. So I suppose, you know, it kind of maybe looks from the outside that there's a kind of an elect, or there's a kind of a group, that there's this community, and community is a word as well that I suppose has such positives, but it's not unalloyed positivity, because community also means people who aren't part of it. So it defines the group, but it also defines as well, I suppose, the outsiders. So I suppose what you want is, you want to have a group that is a welcoming community, and that is welcoming to all sorts of different voices. And I suppose as well, once I got actually out there a little bit, I did find a lot of people that were very just interesting people who wanted to collaborate on things and had ideas and all the rest of it. But it wasn't that I was, you know, initially aware of that, or that I sort of launched myself into it in some way. It is there, but I don't want people to feel kind of really sort of, you know, congratulatory about this. I mean, it is something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. It can be something that you can use, and it can be supportive, but there's something about that tight knit to protect that can stop people getting in, you know. So, but I think both of those. One of the questions that has just popped up here, which is, I think, quite topical and interesting, is, you know, Dalda, has the last year affected your writing?
Being chair of the
the last year, the whole COVID pandemic, locked in, no.
So I feel like I've been very lucky. I've had a good lockdown experience. I know other people haven't. I've been very productive, and I've come across authors who've really struggled to write because of anxiety. And I've been doing work with the Society of Authors and dealing with people, or authors who are suffering extreme hardship, who are freelance writers, have absolutely no money coming in, and aren't being supported by the government, and obviously have no time to write. So it's been very different for different people, isn't it? So I would count myself as incredibly lucky and very grateful.
What about you, Glenn? How have you found this year? You're on mute, Glenn. You're on mute.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you. You know, very fortunate in that the writing part of my life is, you know, I have been doing what I always try to do, which is to use the time that you have in a day to write in that. The other side of it, the Seamus Heaney Centre has been more difficult. Can't get in there. Can't have that experience of meeting people and those chance conversations you have with brilliant students. I can't say this enough. Brilliant students who are writing in all forms, and so that has been difficult. And also the other bit of our life here. I mean, I think how important the Crescent Arts Centre is to literary Belfast in particular. We're all talking about Belfast, but you know, I think all across Northern Ireland as well. But the Crescent Arts Centre, things like the Belfast Book Festival, and you know, the events there where you meet people, where you find out about new writers, new writing. So not having those, nice doing this, but it's no replacement for those chance meetings that you can have at book festivals and things. So yeah, I've managed to keep writing, but I don't feel as though that full writer and reader life is being lived in the last 12 months.
What about you, Shannon?
Well, probably like Glenn, there's a few facets to it, because our daughter's 4.5. The half is very important, you realize, when you're 4.5. And so with schools closed, you know, my whole structure for what I call the luxury of uninterrupted thought just, you know, went out the window. So it's very hard to have any sort of creative energy at 10 o'clock at night doing childcare all day. But bizarrely, I've been really busy. So like I've been able to engage with an amazing disabled writers online retreat through Spread the Word in London, and I've made some wonderful peers of disabled writers, and we're still in contact. There's opportunities that I'm having through the BBC Culture in Quarantine, like a lot of stuff going online. So while on the one hand I'm exhausted and there was a lot of anxiety in the beginning, paradoxically there's a lot of professional opportunities that have opened up, but you do miss that sense of like not just having the glass of wine at the book launch or whatever, and having the chance to see kind of everybody else that you're with again. Because, you know, Zoom, I've been to one Zoom party, and you know that like when you go to a party and it kind of goes, there's like a first peak, and then there's like the dribble off, and then there's a second peak, and that's when you really need to go home. But that doesn't normally happen until like 2 or 3, 4 in the morning. On a Zoom party, everybody like had their tops off at 11 o'clock, and the party started at like 9:30. And I was like, hold on one second. This all happens way too
What
fast.
have done your parties?
We can't. I didn't throw the party. But like, it's a bunch of dubs. So it's just not the same. And bizarrely, like Glenn, the last time I was at like an event, it was with you at the British Council event, and you were wearing your gold lame, and you know, like all that kind of glam and stuff. It's been tricky. It's been really tricky. But I mean, anybody that can make it through this time, and even like the 20 minutes, sorry, that you can get to write something down is better than nothing. Like I know people have been like, oh, I need the hours at the computer. You take what you can get and kind of do the miles. Like partner Grinders does marathons and stuff, which is like the miles on your legs. I'm like, I got the miles on the paper. Like anything to just keep collecting, nothing, and keep that movement going will serve you. You'll be able to come back on it. And parenting during a pandemic that's been like a theme of a few of the grants I'm doing and a lot of the projects, because it is all consuming. Like our daughter's mental health and everybody's mental. I mean, Wendy, you must see this in your kids. Also, what young people have had to negotiate this year is just so unfair. But it's all material. It's all material, and it's all good enough. It just has to be good enough for now as we get through this.
Okay.
Hopefully we get through it.
Paul,
Yeah.
what about you? What about you, Paul? How's yours been?
Oh,
How's
I
your-
don't do much of that writing thing. I only do a wee bit every now and again. I think it's not healthy for me to write too much. But I have written a play for the first time in about 25 years.
Oh.
So I'm not really sure why. But perhaps it just felt that it allowed me to write a play or something. I don't know what it is. So there you go. I've written that. So I've just sent the first draft off, whatever, to
Brilliant. Well done.
people. Yeah, so thank you very much for asking, Glenn. And I just I want to take a little moment. I know a couple of people have made the point on the Q&A there about mentioning all the different forms, and I just want to assure people that this is not a one-off experience. Perhaps if you missed some of the sessions earlier on, it may have been explained a little bit more, that this relationship between the Arts Council of Northern Ireland and the Royal Society of Literature is beginning today, but it's an ongoing project. And you know, I know that there was an announcement at the beginning about the next event, which is already the start of summer, but this will continue. And so I know some of you are saying, oh, well, you know, we need there's the wonderful crime writers that we have here, and we absolutely do, and this whole kind of northern noir, you know, and it's become a whole thing, and there's a fantastic festival that Noel Baez runs and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, and then you've got the children's writers, and you've got the Irish language writers, and you've got the science fiction writers. And I just want to show you that, you know, during the course of this this journey, all of those fields will be explored, and they will have their moment to shine, and the people who quite rightfully know the names and all of the people that we've known, they will be able to shine that light on those people, and so the people tonight are shining a light on their areas. So don't fret that these people are going to be ignored, and we're not trying to squeeze every single person to this evening, or every single form, or every single genre of just fiction alone. I think, you know, there's so many genres in there. So please don't panic, and we really aren't forgetting that they exist, and we really we love and respect those equally, but we'll leave those to the experts to kind of really interrogate us on our knowledge of those forms and those new writers and established writers that we may not know either. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Whew. Okay, thank you. So I think it's 25 past, so I know we're coming to, so maybe there's just, what about if we would anyone like to you can have like a couple of closing sentences before I just wrap up. Is there anything anyone on the panel would just like to say to round up the experience today?
Can I just mention the panel of fellows who will be adjudicating? Just a few names: Bernardine Everisto, Sinead Morrissey, Jay Bernard, Ali Smith, Colm Toybeen, Nikesh Shukla, and myself, and a few others. And
those, so when you send in your
nominations, yeah.
Nomination, thank you. When you send it, I'm normally in bed by now. So when you send in nomination, there's a specially convened judgy, you know, group of esteemed writers that I mean, you know, the Booker winner Bernardine, and, you know, Colm Toybeen, and I mean an amazing group of judges who will get to see and deliberate on this. So that's that great group there. Anyone else like to just round up? You all good?
Seeing everybody. It's been great seeing everybody. It's been lovely talking about books and talking about writers, and there are so many people. You know, I'm now watching the comments coming in, and I've just seen Mara Zepp's name. I mean, Mara Zepp, who's a fantastic writer for really young children, and working in Irish and in English. You know, there are, you're right, Paul, there are so many people who you could, and we hopefully will mention in future ones of these. And you know, it is, I do think at the moment there is just really such an amount of writing, and people hear me, you've come back to live here, Paul. You weren't living here a couple of years ago, you're back. And you know, that's that traffic in and out, the ability to move around, for people to come here, for us to go and live in other places, for all of us to see stuff, hear stuff, read new stuff. That's everything. That's all I want, is just the excitement of new work, new writers, and new writing.
Wonderful.
Can I just add to what Glenn said there? I can just see in the comments that so many people are doing their own writing. And just to say that the idea of new writing as the province of the young, by young I mean people in their 20s, is such an outmoded idea now. And so nobody should feel discouraged at all if they are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. You know, these are all voices that people are interested in, that people want to hear. So nobody should feel discouraged at all that they're not in whatever people want to consider it, the first flush of youth, the spring of their lives, or whatever it is.
First novel,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah.
And on that, I wanted to reiterate that nobody can write the same stories in the same way that you can.
Yeah.
Like I can't write, and everybody, like the world needs to hear your voice and your particular take on things. So it can be really intimidating when you're like, so-and-so's published and so-and-so knows somebody. That's not a good enough excuse.
Thank you, everyone. You've been amazing. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. We've got Molly back here to wish us good night, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much on behalf of everyone listening and watching that conversation. Thank you so much, Paul, Glenn, Wendy, Shannon and Daljit, for bringing our day to a close so beautifully. We're really looking forward to the next Northern Ireland Writers' Day, as Paul said, which will be in the summer, and hope that before then you'll all be submitting your recommendations for the RSL Open programme. Anyone can send a recommendation through our website, and I think we're going to put the link in the chat again now, just so that you've all got that there. If you have any questions while you're writing your recommendation, then you can send that through to us. I think you have Martha Stenhouse, our general manager's email on the form, and the deadline is the 1st of May. So you've got a good month or so to get them in. Our huge thanks from the RSL go to Damien, Grania, Sarah and the whole team at the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. Huge thanks to Paul McVeigh for all his work on the programme. Thank you, Paul, you've been wonderful. And to Beth Gallimore, the RSL's Events and Outreach Manager. If you want to come to all of the RSL's events online, and how could you not after this wonderful evening, you can sign up for our new digital events pass, which is £25. And for that you get tickets to everything, which works out as less than £1 per event across the year. A bargain, I think we can agree. Our next event is at the end of this week on Friday, when we'll be celebrating the new anthology of short stories on romance, passion and desire, Who's Loving You, with contributors Rowan Hisayo Buchanan and Danielle Dash, with the collection's editor Sarita Domingo. You can book now for free as an RSL member or fellow, or if you have a digital events pass, where it's £3 for public tickets. If you've enjoyed today as much as I have, please let us know, or if there's anything that you think we can do better next time, please let us know that as well. We'll be sending a feedback form to everyone, and you can also reach us across the RSL social media. But until next time, I hope you all stay well. A huge thank you again, and a very good night. Bye.
Night,
everybody. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks a million.
Take care, everybody, and thanks for all the questions and comments.